Are you tired of always playing D&D as one of the good guys? Or have you ever wanted to backstab one of your friend's characters just for fun? Or maybe you just love Drow for other reasons? If so, stay tuned because I may have just the adventure for you. Hey folks, I'm William. This is Runeforged. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about The Widow's Web, Trials of the Drow, a D&D 5e adventure by Eight-Legged Entertainment. In the interest of full disclosure, I did receive a free preview copy of this adventure, but I have not received any compensation for making this video. But that also means there are no restrictions on what I am allowed to say. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video where I give my final verdict on the adventure overall. And if you'd like to find out more about The Widow's Web, I'll make sure to put a link down in the description. So what is The Widow's Web? Well, it's basically a battle royale for 6 to 8 8th level Drow characters. The adventure itself includes 3 webs, where each web is a series of up to 8 encounters that are all designed to be played as a single one-shot session. Some of the encounters are more combat focused, some are more like lore or logic puzzles, while others play out more like an obstacle course. Typically, 1 or more characters are knocked out during each encounter, and the last champion standing becomes the leader of the Drow city of Karik'Marz for the next 100 years. And then you can do it all over again up to 2 more times with a brand new set of characters and challenges. And overall, it's just a really cool concept. But you know what else is really cool? Taking a few seconds to stab that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on more awesome adventure spotlights like this in the future. Next, I just want to give you a quick preview of what you can expect from a Widow's Web encounter. So I don't want to spoil anything from the main game, but I am going to walk through an early access preview encounter so you can get a feel for what you might be able to expect from the final game. So first, we start off with a series of rules tweaks to make it more suitable for the type of game it's trying to be. So for example, there are no death saves in this adventure. Basically, once a character goes down to 0 hit points, they are effectively out of the game and cannot be resurrected in any way. Going into the encounter itself, there's a bunch of good information here. In this About the Room section, you can see a little bit about like an overview of what the encounter is going to entail. Next, you've got the GM facing battle map for the encounter, which is very clearly keyed and set up so that it makes it easy for the dungeon master to set up the encounter. So what the characters need to do in this mission is that they're going to be starting at the bottom of the map. They need to run all the way to the top and pick up some various different idols that are resting at the far end of the chamber. And then they need to make their way back to the exit portal back down at the bottom. And the catch is that there are only 7 idols, but there are 8 players. So one person is not making it out of this room alive. And of course, there are a ton of various complications. For one, you've got a Vasilak, which is essentially a Drider, that is shooting at the characters with restraining crossbow bolts. You've also got a couple Ice Wraiths that are trying to slow down the characters with their various different cold attacks, as well as a Neurodemon, which is literally trying to mind control the characters so that they walk into the fire pits. And on top of that, the various different idols each have like various different buffs and debuffs that they're applying to the person that's holding onto them. And this can drastically affect the outcome of the encounter. And then to top it all off, you've also got various different chests scattered around the room, which each contain a unique magic item that will aid the characters for the rest of the game. But overall, just a lot of really cool stuff going on in this encounter. And that leads us really nicely into the what did I like about the Widow's Web section. I think kind of the most important thing to say just right off the bat is that we just had a really awesome time playing through the first web in this book. I think everyone, including the people that got knocked out pretty early in the experience, everybody said that they had a really great time playing through it, and I had a really good time running it as well. Also, like the production quality on the adventure is pretty high. I especially really like the art, and I know that's kind of subjective, but I don't feel like you see art like this in especially in more recent 5th edition products, or really 5th edition at all. And I just really like the kind of, it feels like more old school in a certain way, but also it's very well done, like technically. It's also got some like really nice looking maps, and they include both player and GM facing maps, which again, I really appreciate. And the GM maps are laid out really nicely. They've got like very clear keying, and it just really makes it easy to set up the maps in the appropriate way. I also really appreciated the inclusion of like a player's guide. I've seen a couple different products doing this recently, and it's a trend that I really appreciate. Basically, it's like a book that gives the players basically everything they need to know about creating and running the type of character that would fit in with the adventure overall. And I really love this because it saves me, like the GM, a ton of time trying to like go through the adventure and figure out like, well, what do the characters actually know about the situation and what do they not? And also saves me the time of trying to figure out like how to communicate that information to the players. And essentially I could just take the player's guide and say, hey, go read this. And then I don't really have to worry about that part of it anymore. And then also I really wanted to say like there are some really awesome encounters included in the Widow's Web. And I think in particular, the like kind of obstacle course one from the first web was really a highlight for me and my group at least. You know, there's already like a ton of different like mechanics on the map, and then like you've got the players kind of interacting with each other and messing with one another. And it was just really cool to see like the players start to figure out the map and how it played, and then seeing them like try to figure out like the best way to use like their own abilities and the various different like kind of power-ups that are like on the map in order to get where they needed to go and kind of mess with each other along the way. So that was just a really fun and exciting thing to see. I also really enjoyed the final encounter. You know, I don't want to give away too much. It's a pretty simple encounter, but it was very satisfying from like a narrative perspective, like a dramatic perspective. And in our game, like the last encounter came down to a difference of only like 11 hit points, so it could have very easily gone, you know, one way or the other. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a few of the things that I, you know, didn't like as much. And I have to say, like, I think my biggest complaint about the adventure overall is that it definitely felt like there were some points where, you know, folks basically died to insta-kill mechanics that I didn't feel were like sufficiently telegraphed, or there was like enough context to know like just how dangerous the situation was. And I know to some extent that's kind of intended, but it felt like a really harsh penalty, especially for folks that aren't as familiar with like Drow like lore and culture. I do like the idea that people who are kind of more versed on Drow lore do have some sort of advantage, but the penalty for not knowing like some of the culture stuff, the penalty for that being like an insta-death mechanic, it felt pretty rough. I will say that the result of those insta-kills wasn't nearly as bad as I was kind of expecting it to be. And I think like a pretty big part of why that's the case is I really went out of my way prior to the game to try and set some really clear expectations about, you know, what the players were getting themselves into. And I invited them. I was like, I know this looks like D&D, but I want you to treat this more like a party game, like Mario Party or Mario Kart, in the way that, you know, some of you are going to get knocked out by some pretty ridiculous stuff, things that you're not going to be able to see coming, or, you know, other players ganging up on you. And while I was encouraging everyone to do their best to try and win, I really was like, hey, you should not take this too seriously, because no matter how good of a player you are, how awesome your character is, like sometimes you're just going to lose to some pretty crazy stuff. And I think as long as players kind of go in with that mindset, it really does help to salve some of those wounds that you might otherwise get in other types of games where you just kind of get insta-killed for a reason that you don't really understand or it doesn't really make sense. So yeah, the summary is just like set very clear expectations with your players about what they're walking into, and I think you'll avoid a lot of the negative consequences of these more arbitrary death mechanics. And then lastly, it did kind of feel like there were a couple situations where there were just like too many mechanics in play at one time. And I definitely admit that I'm probably, when it comes to the number of mechanics that I want in play at any given time, I'm probably on the lower end of things. Like I don't want a bunch of kind of robust tracking. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but like there are like 3 different kind of similar, like, I don't, meta currencies may not be the right word, but you have like Widow's Inspiration, Widow's Luck, and then Mother's Mercy. And these are all kind of like points or tokens that you spend to get various different effects. And like that can be kind of a lot to keep track of in terms of like special rules already like on top of everything that you're already dealing with in terms of like the characters have their own rules and the scenario has their own rules, and then you've got these various different like tokens that you're trying to keep track of, and there's like curses on top of all that stuff, and there were just some cases where it definitely felt like a lot. And ultimately, I think I ended up just not using the Mother's Mercy stuff. I just cut that from the game, and whenever it asked me to give that, I just gave more Widow's Luck instead. I got rid of it and it didn't seem to affect too much, so that's what I did. And And then curses in particular, I thought the curses mechanic was really cool, and I also liked the stuff that I added about, you know, when a character, you know, dies, they can put a curse on one of the other champions, like they kind of last through the rest of the adventure. I thought that was pretty cool. So I guess in some ways maybe I made my own bet on this one, but there were definitely cases where there were like a few too many curses like floating around. During the last encounter, the two remaining folks both had multiple curses on them, and it did get a little bit, like a little bit much to kind of track. I mean, we were like forgetting various different things. We had to go back and fix stuff, and yeah, so that was a little bit of a pain. But if you were running this in person and you're using like the handout, like the card handouts, it's probably not as bad in terms of tracking. And then also, like I probably made this harder than it needed to be because there were probably more curses in play because of the additional rule that I added about, you know, letting people do like sort of death curse like as they were dying. So maybe this is on me, but that was something that I encountered when I was playing. So just thought I'd throw that out there. But yeah, so what are my overall thoughts on the Widow's Web? I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I thought it was amazing. I loved it. My players loved it. I think just everybody had a really great time all around. But yeah, it was so much fun that I could definitely see us making this like an annual thing, or maybe just something that we do in between longer campaigns as sort of like a palate cleanser. It felt nice because like you have these like familiar mechanics, so you're not like trying to learn a whole new game, but it's a very different twist on like the standard 5e formula, and it was a really nice and new feeling experience. Oh, I did want to talk about one more thing. I've been talking to Carl over at Eight Legged Entertainment. You know, we've maybe exchanged like 15 emails or something, and I don't know him personally, but he seems like a pretty cool dude, very professional. And yeah, I just get and like super passionate. I definitely get the impression that this is a labor of love for him and his team. It sounds like basically like an adaptation of stuff that he's been running at his own home games for like the past 30 years or so. And I just think that's really cool. Anyway, if the Widow's Web sounds interesting to you, and you'd like to support a small but passionate third-party creator, I will make sure to put a link to the Kickstarter down in the description. But I think that's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye.